即係冇咗法之後，或者我哋所謂最原初嗰個情況，唔知，因為其實我係睇咗 Hobbes 之後先睇阿甘本，我成日都覺得係好似係有啲對話喺度，但係又講唔出。
Bare life is not an original. Bare life is not the original state. Zoe is the original state, right? Like bare life is what is produced after the distinction between Zoe and bios, right? So
我即係講翻其實呢度即係點解佢呢度要講話係有個係咯，即係答翻頭先同朋友問嗰個問題。
明白。
或者我哋唔好斟酌呢樣嘢，可以繼續睇落去。
繼續落去再有冇問？OK， 跟住落去，因為我讀埋一段啦。Kingston's analysis centers on an essential technical problems that profoundly marks the evolution of the modern parliamentary regimes. The delegation contained in the full powers laws mentioned above, and the resulting extension of the executive's powers into the legislative sphere through the issuance of decrees and measures. By full powers laws, we mean those laws by which an exceptionally broad regulatory powers is granted to the executive, particularly the power to modify or abrogate by decree the laws in force. Because laws of this nature, which should be issued to cope with exceptional circumstances of necessity or emergency, conflict with fundamental hierarchy of law and regulation in democratic constitutions, and delegate to the executive a legislative power that should rest exclusively with Parliament. Kingston seeks to examine the situation that arose in a series of countries: France, Switzerland, Belgium, the US, England, Italy, Austria, and Germany. From the systematic expansion of executive powers during World War I, when a state of siege was declared or full powers laws issued in many of the warring states, and even in neutral ones like Switzerland, the book goes no further than recording a large number of case histories. Nevertheless, in the conclusion, the author seems to realize that although a temporary and controlled use of full powers is theoretically compatible with democratic constitutions, a systematic and regular exercise of the institution necessarily leads to the liquidation of democracy. In fact, the gradual erosion of the legislative powers of Parliament, which today is often limited to ratifying measures that the executive issues through decrees having the force of law, has since then become a common practice. From this perspective, World War I and the years following it appear as a laboratory for testing and honing the functional mechanisms and apparatuses of the state of exception as the paradigm of government. One of the essential characteristics of the state of exception, the provisional abolition of the distinction among legislative, executive, and judicial powers, here shows its tendency to become a lasting practice of government. 有冇咩疑問或者意見？其實呢段主要係講翻咧，其實同法國大革命時代嘅嗰緊急圍困狀態係唔同嘅。佢呢度 refer 翻 to 第一次世界大戰嘅歐洲國家咧，佢哋又係有 even 嗰陣時中立嘅瑞士都係有實行，因為呢個戰爭嘅情況而實行過一啲類似嘅例外狀態嘅。咁但係佢裏邊講到嗰個情況唔同，佢裏邊有帶出就係話佢嗰行政權再擴大啦，甚至佢喺最尾嗰度佢講翻就係話暫時佢去 the provisional abolition of the distinction among legislative, executive and judicial powers。即係其實佢一步一步，其實佢呢個論述裏邊講就係呢個例外狀態係由法納命開始，但係一步一步越嚟越接近納粹佢哋嗰種嘅頒布例外狀態源自威瑪憲法嗰個情況咯。即係佢意思係一個 gradual 嘅一個變化咯，佢唔係納粹有乜嘢嘢係好 specific， 啲話係點樣？佢係逐漸即係呢個係同一個現代主權去應用法律去應付一啲戰爭啊，或者一啲國家危險狀況嘅呢個 practice 都係好相關。咁或者我再揾人讀落去下一段嗰幾段。喂，有冇人自告奮勇？
好多差我讀咗啦。Federalist makes much more use than is adherent of Smith's theory of dictatorship, which is dismissed in a footnote as a partisan jab. Smith's distinction between commissarial dictatorship and sovereign dictatorship reappears here as an opposition between constitutional dictatorship, which seeks to safeguard the constitutional order, and unconstitutional dictatorship, which leads to its overthrow. The impossibility of defining and overcoming the force that determine the transition from the first to the second form of dictatorship, which is precisely what happened. For example, in Germany, is the fundamental aporia of federalist books, and it is generally of all theory of constitutional dictatorship. All such theory remain prisoner in the vicious circle in which the emergency measure they seek to justify in the name of defending the democratic constitution are the same one that leads to its wound. There are no ultimate institutional safeguards available for ensuring that emergency power be used for the purpose of preserving the constitution. Only the people's own determination to see them as so used can make sure of that. All in all, the quasi-dictatorial provision of modern constitutional system, be they martial rule, state of siege, or constitutional emergency power, fail to conform to any exacting standard of effective limitation upon a temporary concentration of powers. Consequently, all these systems are liable to be transformed into totalitarian schemes if conditions become favorable to it. In Rosita's book, these aporia explode into open contradictions. Unlike Kingston and Federalist, Rosita explicitly seeks to justify constitutional dictatorship through a broad historical examination. His hypothesis here is that because the democratic regime with its complex balance of power is conceived to function under normal circumstances, in times of crisis, a democratic constitutional government must temporarily be altered to whatever degree is necessary to overcome the peril and restore normal conditions. This alternation invariably involves government of a stronger character. That is, the government will have more power and the people fewer rights. Rosita is aware that constitutional dictatorship, that is the state of exception, has in fact become a paradigm of government, a well-established principle of constitutional government, and that, as such, it is fraught with dangers. Nevertheless, it is precisely the immanent necessity of constitutional dictatorship that he intends to demonstrate. But as he makes this attempt, he entangles himself in irresolvable contradictions. Indeed, Smith's model, which he judged to be child-raising with somewhat occasional, and which he seeks to combat, in which the distinction between commissarial dictatorship and sovereign dictatorship is not one of nature but of degree, with the decisive figure undoubtedly being the latter, is not so easily overcome. Although Rosita provides no fewer than 11 criteria for distinguishing constitutional dictatorship from unconstitutional dictatorship, none of them is capable either of defining a substantial difference between the two or of ruling out the passage from one to the other. The fact is that the two essential criteria of absolute necessity and temporariness, which all the others come down into the last analysis, contradict what Rosita knows perfectly well, that is, that the state of exception has by now become the rule. In the atomic age upon which the world is now entering, the use of constitutional emergency power may well become the rule and not the exception. And as he says even more clearly at the end of the book, in describing the emergency power of Western democracy, this book may have given the impression that such techniques of government as executive dictatorship, the delegation of legislative power, and lawmaking by administrative decree were purely transitory and temporary in nature. Such an impression would be distinctly misleading. The instruments of government depicted here as temporary crisis arrangement have in some country, and may eventually in all countries, become lasting peacetime institutions. This prediction, which comes 8 years after Benjamin's first formulation in the active thesis on the concept of history, was undoubtedly accurate, but the words that conclude about sound more stark. No sacrifice is too great for democracy, least of all the temporary sacrifice of democracy itself.